I've been making power rankings for 7+ years on this channel, and I can confidently say I have never had as hard of a time figuring out who the hell I'm supposed to rank number one. We are at a very interesting place in the NFL as we head into week 7, and I think it's going to make for some very fun conversations here today. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Week 7 Power Rankings Show, everybody. As we get started here, if you could do me a huge favor, please take a second to hit that like button down below. It really does help me out. And make sure you're subscribed as well. I like to remind people, this video is more snapshot reactions to the week. I will be doing my full Week 6 review show for the Fully Inflated Football Podcast, both on this channel and on the podcast feed, wherever you get your shows, if you want to go follow Fully Inflated, wherever that might be. But let's go ahead and get started. At the very bottom, keeping this as the super mega booty tier, a new team at the bottom here, though unfortunately Titans fans are familiar with seeing their team down here. Hard to call it rock bottom, as it seemingly can always get worse if you're a Titans fan, but finally pulling the trigger on firing Brian Callahan. Like, we all saw this one coming. This was one of the most just like, by the eye test and the results, you could tell from the very beginning, frankly, that he just wasn't really equipped to be the head coach. So I am interested to see if Mike McCoy can come in and, get this offense with more of a consistent direction. I don't think this defense is horrible in Tennessee. Like, Jeffrey Simmons is having a great year. But right now, this team was just an utter miracle in that Cardinals game, away from being an easy 0-6, right? So Titans find themselves at the bottom here. And by the way, Cam Ward feels to be regressing this season. Last week was a horrible performance against the Raiders. Tough to watch, frankly. So Titans, a new team at the bottom, but the New York Jets without a win, the only team without a win here, are at number 31. I'm going to at least point out one positive, that Aaron Glenn got his defense to go out to London and give it their all this week. This team hasn't quit on Aaron Glenn quite yet, and we know they have talent on defense, so it's at least good to see them maybe heading in the right direction on that side of the ball, as Aaron Glenn did come in here as a defensive coach to accomplish that first and foremost. But woof, man, Justin Fields looking like a complete waste of $40 million. You got to think Tyrod Taylor starting here is on the horizon. His name should be Justin Can't See the Field, because he holds on to the ball forever. He takes 1 million sacks, can't throw the ball with any anticipation. It's over for Justin Fields, man. It's just unwatchable tape against the Broncos this week. And the Jets offense had 82 yards of offense. The only reason they scored this week was because of 2 kickoff returns, a forced fumble by the defense, and a holding call that gets them a safety. Yeah, super mega booty. Definitely feels like the right description of the New York Jets. And they actually round out this bottom tier here, as we're going to climb up to the teams that are just booty. And the Cincinnati Bengals climbing out of that very bottom tier here this week. I will give a tip of the cap to Joe Flacco, coming in here on just a week of preparation with this team. Once Zach Taylor decided he was going to let Joe Flacco actually throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field, Flacco looked really comfortable. Thought he was accurate, took care of the ball, and even made some big throws to keep the offense moving against a pretty good Packers defense, if not a great Packers defense in Lambeau. So at least some relative life for the Bengals offense. We'll see where it can go from there, but relative life paired with this defense is still not gonna get this team very far. But a +2 for the Bengals this week nonetheless. And then the New Orleans Saints, they are going to drop down a spot, but they are actually climbing out of the very bottom tier. I think they have distanced themselves from teams like the Titans and the Jets. The Saints are just a much more competent football team on a week-to-week basis. And while it took some pretty unbelievable, questionable calls by the refs for this game to be close against the Patriots, that's kind of been the story on this team's season, is the effort is good, the coaching feels good, and even though they're dropping down a spot here again, the Saints at least are a level of frisky that you can't necessarily say about the Titans and the Jets. Same deal with the Raiders here. almost identical movement where they're actually dropping down a spot in the overall rankings, but climbing out of that bottom tier, distancing themselves from those bottom two teams with a win this week against the Tennessee Titans. Geno a little bit better this week, though still a sloppy turnover in there. Fun to see the Raiders defense find some life this week. From players beyond Max Crosby, Devin White flying away around, Jamal Adams. Tyree Wilson has shown up a little bit this year. Again, it's against the Titans, so I don't want to overreact, but it was a defense that for a few weeks there felt like they were going to get steamrolled by no matter who they played, and they definitely showed up this week, so good to see that. And then we have the Cleveland Browns at number 27, dropping down 3 spots here. They just can't buy a win, and frankly, I thought they would put up more of a fight against the Steelers. The offense just really struggling to get a whole lot going with Dylan Gabriel against the Steelers. Granted, it's a good defense, but that was discouraging. And honestly, I thought the defense could have done more on their end as well. You still got to show up if you're going to beat the Cleveland Browns. And yet again, they are distanced from those bottom 2 teams. But this team is also 1-5 and going through a transition season for a reason. Then we have the Miami Dolphins. They fall to 1-5. They've definitely been competitive and they can move the ball. It's, tough because I do think Mike McDaniel inevitably is going to lose his job here. It just feels like this Dolphins team needs a change of direction as an overall organization. It's not just the coach. It's the quarterback in Tua who continues to play poor, and the GM, Chris Greer, his leash he's well overstayed his welcome. Let's just say that. And I think Mike McDaniel is catching a little bit of friendly fire from that. Like the Dolphins are still putting up points basically on the heels of their scheme and getting creative ways to get Devon Achane to carry this offense, really. But the overall soft mentality of this team also, I think, is under the umbrella of Mike McDaniel as a head coach. And this defense is just putrid. So the Dolphins fall to 1-5, despite really being a play away from beating the Chargers this week, staying put at number 26 in the rankings. Then the New York Giants at number 25. This is the first team that we've discussed here that really did have a good week. I mean, looking back on it, if only they didn't fumble 3 times and found a way to beat the Saints last week, things could be getting interesting for a 3-3 Giants team here. But they do beat the Philadelphia Eagles this week, and they didn't just beat the Eagles, they kind of boat raced them. Like, came out with the opening drive touchdown and were really in control from start to finish. Jackson Dart, definitely the best start of his young career so far, really showing some more with his arm, frankly, than he had in the first couple weeks, where it was a lot more just with the scrambles and some of the fun stuff they can do schematically with his mobility. And the defensive line is getting going a little bit more here, as was obviously expected heading into the year with all the talent there. So big week for Brian Daboll and the Giants. They are a 2-4 team, but of all the teams we've discussed so far, the Giants definitely have my attention the most, and they're going to round out the booty tier. Now, before we reintroduce my favorite tier in my power ranking series that always shows up around this time of the year with Schrodinger's box of cats, I want to thank the sponsor for today's video, SeatGeek. You guys, this is the best time to be a sports fan. We've got the heat of the NFL season, NHL and NBA are starting up here, and for some of you lucky baseball fans, your team might be pursuing a championship still. SeatGeek has got you all covered with the best app, the best user interface. They make their system easy by color coding every single seat. Just look for the green dots, and you know you're getting the most bang for your buck, but not just on the SeatGeek app, but bang for your buck in terms of market competitive prices as well. I'm always surveying other options, other apps. I always find myself back at SeatGeek. They just have the best options at the best price. Beyond that, if you've never been to the venue or you're looking to sit somewhere you haven't before, they're awesome about putting images of what the actual seats will look like when you sit down. I love that. And you also get the tickets right there in the SeatGeek app. You don't have to jump through other email chains and other apps just to get your tickets and end up with this stressful experience approaching the gate. So again, SeatGeek has got all of your needs covered. And now if you use code TFG10 at checkout, you can save up to $20 on your next purchase as well and support my channel in the process. So that is code TFG10 at checkout on SeatGeek. Have a great time wherever you're headed, and let's get back to the power rankings. All right, like I mentioned, it is officially that time in the season where I invite the Schrodinger's Box of Cats tier to the rankings for those that are new to the channel or haven't seen this before. This was a reference to a famous quantum physics thought experiment by Erwin Schrodinger, an Austrian physicist, and I always enjoy seeing the scientists and physics majors come out in the comments when I try to explain this, because others can explain it better than me. But essentially, Schrodinger theorized this experiment where you have a box with a cat inside of it, and to not get too far into the physics of it, there's a contraption that may or may not kill the cat. And as Schrodinger was considering the state of the cat inside the box, he said that the cat is in a state of superposition and can be considered both alive and dead. And it isn't until you open the box that you know the state of the cat. Apply that to football terms here. We have a cluster of teams in the middle of the league that are going through things, whether it's learning things about them schematically, have young players hoping to reach new heights, or maybe they're battling injuries. But we have teams that are inside the middle of the league, inside Schrodinger's box. And it's just going to need to be a few weeks until we can open the box and find out if these teams are alive or dead. And all of the teams in this tier, at least right now, can be considered both alive and dead. Whether you appreciate the analogy or not, let's talk some football with these teams. At number 24, the Arizona Cardinals sit at 2-4 in an extremely painful 2-4, knowing just how close this team is to this season looking entirely different. Really 4 straight weeks of coulda, shoulda, woulda ball at the end of the game. This week, they go into Indianapolis with Jacoby Brissett and almost win, but almost winning has been the unfortunate story of the Cardinals this season. They fall just short in what was a pretty impressive effort by Jacoby Brissett without his top 2 running backs and Marvin Harrison, who left early in this game. I will continue to reiterate that I don't think the Cardinals are bad, and maybe their close game luck can take a positive turn of events here, but obviously, they got to start winning some of these games to keep this season alive. They are absolutely on life support right now, as is, I think, Jonathan Gannon and his job security. But then we have the Dallas Cowboys at number 23. It was an unfortunate week going into Carolina, and an unfortunate week as well in the sense that a lot of the teams that ranked behind them impressed and are going to be jumping Dallas in the rankings. The Cowboys are going to be our biggest faller of the week, losing 7 spots in the rankings and dropping down into this tier. It's just obviously when your defense is in the state that they're in, Matt Eberflus is not doing a good job with this defense as well. It's just, it reduces your margin for error so much against the offense. And Dak and this offense stalled just a couple of times, and that was enough for Bryce Young and Rico Dowdle and the Panthers to kind of command the clock, take the lead in the end, and send Dallas home packing with a loss in Charlotte this week. It's not all bad. Dak continues to play well, and George Pickens has been a really fun addition to this team, and they're going to get CeeDee Lamb back hopefully this week, if not pretty soon. So my opinion on where Dallas is hasn't changed too much, frankly. It's just other teams are navigating around them. That on top of, this was a costly loss where you do see the deficiencies in that defense, and kind of a fork in the roads moment. These week 5, week 6 games are big for Dallas to be sitting here 2-3-1 instead of 3-2-1. It really does matter in a short NFL season like this. But it is going to be the Carolina Panthers at number 22 that do jump up 3 spots and surpass the Dallas Cowboys here. 2 straight wins for the Panthers. These cats absolutely belong inside Schrodinger's box. We saw this with the Panthers last year too, right? The horrible start and then kind of figured things out as the season goes on. Maybe that is something we're going to learn is, a characteristic of Dave Canale's Bryce Young football team. I don't know. But I do know that Bryce Young is playing so much better the last really 6 quarters of football after leading that comeback against the Dolphins. The defense is like slowly, steadily finding some guys to at least contribute to getting some stops. Like I think their run defense has really impressed these last couple of weeks. And while the Cowboys and Dolphins aren't great teams, those are 2 teams that have been able to run the football. And Carolina shut them down and found ways to outpace the opponent's passing games the last couple of weeks. So between Rico Dowdle running all over the ball, Bryce Young playing a little bit better, and the defense at least having a heartbeat, Carolina's making this thing interesting at 3-3, hoping to maybe with an easier schedule still in the next few weeks, throw their name into the hat in terms of wild card contenders in the NFC. Likewise with the Minnesota Vikings, who were on bye this week, so not a ton to say, just a -2 with some other teams navigating around them. I continue to be very interested to see what they look like moving forward. I think you can kind of take a deep breath that they survived a really tough start to the season with J.J. McCarthy getting his first starts and a lot of injuries on this team, but hopefully coming off the bye week more healthy, and we'll see if and when we see J.J. McCarthy, but beyond that, it's about the injuries on the O-line and the Addison suspension, and hopefully getting Van Ginkel and Blake Cashman back soon. It was so much more than just J.J. McCarthy. So kind of a fresh start coming out of the bye week for the Vikings. Going to be fun to see how the rest of their year goes, because I know there's a lot of potential with this roster and this coaching staff. But then the Chicago Bears climbing up 2 spots. Huge win in Washington. They climbed to 3-2. I'm still not ready to fully trust this Bears team. That is a game that definitely could have gone either way in Washington, but they dig deep and they pull this one out. They've had a couple of these close game wins. They get the blocked field goal for the win against the Raiders. Then this game, they recover a fumble in the rain to kind of open up the opportunity to win this game when it was not looking good for them down the stretch. So if you're a Bears fan, you definitely don't want the weekly heart attack here. You'd rather win in more comfortable fashion. And especially this Bears defense is just really hard to trust, right? They don't have too much of a pass rush. They've been extremely dependent on turnovers right now. It can be hard to count on those turnovers, especially when you don't have too much of a pass rush. And offensively, I love what Ben Johnson is doing. I love what these weapons have to offer. And DeAndre Swift has been a really explosive player when they can get him out in space. I think Caleb Williams continues to be pretty streaky, but they're putting points on the board. They're scrapping out tough wins. And man, they as well are absolutely throwing their name into the hat for what's going to be an interesting, I think, wild card race for a lot of these NFC teams. But then the San Francisco 49ers, I'm going to put them here at number 19. Boy, it just felt like that Fred Warner injury is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's been highly commendable what Shanahan and Saleh have done with this offense and with this defense, with really a historic rate of superstars going down for injuries. It's unlike anything I can really ever remember with this Niners team. I don't know what kind of deal Shanahan made with the devil, but they just don't have anybody left, man. And maybe Brock Purdy and Kittle and maybe even Ayuk can come in and you get an offensive spark to trust them on that side of the ball beyond what they're getting from Mac Jones right now, which isn't bad. Maybe that happens at some point and we'll react accordingly if it does, but the ceiling for this Niners team it's just hard to get excited about it right now. I still like their floor, relatively speaking, because they might be a top 3, at worst top 5 best coached teams in the league, and that's going to set the floor. But at some point, the injuries and the existing roster talent, it's going to hold this team back. And we saw that this week as the game went on against Tampa. So a pretty serious drop for the Niners as well. They also dropped 7 spots. That ties the Cowboys for the biggest fallers this week. Then the Chargers, they get their win just barely against the Dolphins. While a last-ditch W against the Dolphins isn't necessarily impressive, I think for any NFL team, when you're as injured, especially on the offensive line as the Chargers are, and you go on the road across the country and get a win, it's at least an accomplishment. Now, they're not moving in the power rankings. I think we have them exactly in the right spot. But if you're going with that Schrodinger's box of cats analogy, this is why that tier exists. We know Herbert is playing fantastic. We know this team has grit under the identity of being a Harbaugh coached team, but you're hoping in a week or two when you open up the box, you get Joe Alt back, you get Khalil Mack back, and this team can get back to playing like they did in the first couple weeks of the season where they felt like one of the better teams in the league. It's just that's clearly not where the Chargers are at right now, coming off a couple of tough losses and barely escaping in Miami here. And the same exact logic is going to apply to the Baltimore Ravens here at number 17. Look, they're going up 3 spots here. Lamar Jackson should be back. Anytime you add one of the 3 or 4 most valuable players in the league back into the picture, you can expect a rekindling of this team's abilities. I know it's been a brutal couple of weeks, and you can't forgive that, but this team is making some changes defensively. They obviously made the Owe for Gilman trade, and we saw this last year with Zach Orr as well. Brutal defense to start, make some adjustments, at least settle down defensively. Last year, they became one of the best defenses in the league after some adjustments. I don't know that that's in play for them right now. I think even if Lamar comes back and this offense can reach their full potential at the snap of a finger, I still think this defense has a lot of question marks, but it was at least good to see the defense hang in there this week against the Rams. But even if the Ravens are 1-5, I'm taking a Ravens team with Lamar on it over the teams we've discussed to this point. And I don't think this team's going to just roll over and die. I think it's going to be an interesting race to see if they can incrementally climb back into at least the wild card picture and maybe by season's end become that one playoff team that nobody wants to see in January. But they are going to round out the Schrodinger's box of cats tier. And now we will climb up to the playoff fringe teams. Definitely teams that have my attention and have legitimate playoff potential, but all these teams, I think, have a little bit more to prove or some bigger question marks than the teams in our top 2 categories. And that's going to start with the Washington Commanders. I still like this team, but we are definitely, I think, feeling the deficiencies in their roster. I think defensively, you've seen some real issues with this team. They really struggled against the Falcons. They really struggled this week in a lot of aspects in that game against the Bears. I worry about their pass rush. I worry about their team speed on the back end. And offensively, I mean, they're doing what they can with Terry McLaurin out, but God, it would feel good to see him back out there making the game-changing plays he was able to bring to the table for this team last year. Jaden Daniels, I do think, outside of the one costly pick early in the Bears game, the last couple weeks since, coming off the injury, I think he has settled back in and is mostly playing like the Jaden that we got to experience last year. And that alone really can keep this team in the mix for the playoffs. And that alone, like outside of Jaden Daniels, you got to squint a little bit harder to find the difference makers on this Commanders team. It's Laramie Tunsil, and then, Bill Krosky-Merritt right now, maybe? Like, I just don't know how serious you can take a team if Bill Krosky-Merritt is the 3rd best player on your team at this point in time, with all due respect to the breakout rookie. So Washington at 3-3 does fall 5 spots this week, and a big part of that, too, is other teams behind them continue to impress, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be a team that I do have them passing Washington here this week, going up 2 spots in the power rankings. They get to 4-1. Nice convincing win over Cleveland this week. I think Aaron Rodgers getting more and more comfortable here. The Steelers defense maybe getting a little bit more healthy, really dominating this week. I'm still just kind of waiting to see this team face a real challenge this season. I know Steelers fans are going to say, oh, you only play who's on the schedule. And yes, they did beat New England in a game where New England couldn't stop fumbling the football. But they got the Bengals here on Thursday Night Football, but then they have a stretch of Packers, Colts, Chargers. That's going to be a real litmus test for, all right, are the Steelers a team that's going to just beat up on bad teams and be what they've been for years as, that 9-8, 10-7 kind of wild card contending team that's very solid? Or should we be taking this team a little bit more seriously? So Steelers fans, just give me one more week, and then we'll start to get an opportunity to really get that eval on the Steelers. But then the Houston Texans, they were on bye this week. Really excited to see if they can continue to play the way they've been playing offensively, see if the improvements with the offensive line are here to stay or if those issues will return. But obviously love this defense and feel pretty good about where we've got them right now heading into week 7. But then the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're going to fall down 4 and fall out of that playoff caliber tier. And unironically, there's a chance that they just fell victim of the TFG channel curse this week. I dedicated last week to making a one-off film breakdown video on the Jags, and honestly, I stand by everything I said in that video. I still think the Jags have impressed this year, and even after a disappointing loss to the Seahawks this week, I don't think this team's going to just go away after a loss this week, even though the timing with me making that video is certainly unfortunate. But you know, the one thing I highlighted in that video being what has been the main area of this team that hasn't been particularly good or certainly not consistent has been their passing game. And that was what held them back in this one against the Seahawks. The offensive line struggled against Mike McDonald's blitzes. Trevor Lawrence continued to miss throws. You have yet another backbreaking drop from Brian Thomas. I thought maybe after they beat the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, we were seeing things heading in the right direction there. Well, they take a little bit of a U-turn this week, and that's certainly discouraging. The Jags are not going to be a consistent team and not a true playoff caliber team in my mind until they can consistently throw the football and catch the football. That's why they see this fall in the rankings this week. But I'm not jumping ship on the Jaguars either. I still think this can be a really hard out any given week, and can be a 9 or a 10 win team that maybe even competes in the AFC South. But then the Atlanta Falcons, a pair of back-to-back absolute statement victories after they got shut out and lost to the Panthers 30-0. They've turned around and put it up against the Commanders and their defense. And then more importantly, they host the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football and they win that game. But what's exciting is both those wins came in different ways, right? The Commanders game was Michael Penix playing, an outstanding game of football, his best game of this season. We started to see this kind of new schematic wrinkle from the Falcons that Zach Robinson's bringing to the table, where they're playing 12 personnel, but it's actually taking Charlie Warner and putting him as a running back, and that allows them to put Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson out on the wing, and then they're, motioning Bijan in and out of the backfield to give him carries or giving him, jet sweep pop passes with Warner as a lead blocker. And it's like teams don't really know how to defend this right now. It's really working the last couple of weeks because if you treat that as 12 personnel and come out in base, well, they've spread you out, and Bijan and Pitts are excellent flexed out wide. But if you want to come out in nickel and try to defend it that way, they can ground it up on you there. So really like that from the offense. And then, man, this week against the Bills, it's been about a year since I've seen Josh Allen that uncomfortable. I saw Next Gen Stats charted them with a 56% blitz rate against Josh Allen and the Bills. Just a super impressive night from this defense. Out scheming Joe Brady and Josh Allen and just had them guessing and super uncomfortable. I know we saw that Sunday night game against the Vikings was impressive as well, but to do it against Josh Allen's Bills is a whole nother level. This to me was a statement night for DeMeco Ryans and his kind of defensive infrastructure with Jeff Ulbrich as the defensive coordinator as well, but obviously Raheem Morris, kind of the overseer, godfather of their defense. Like, their just defensive infrastructure as a whole blew me away with their game plan against the Bills. So playing complimentary football in Atlanta for the first time in God knows how long. It's really exciting to see, just the biggest of wins, frankly. They get a +9 this week. They beat the Commanders. They go on the bye week. It was still a little bit hesitant after they had gotten shut out and lost to the Panthers 30-0. It now feels much more like they've brushed that off. That's not who they are. And then we should be taking this Falcons team a whole lot more serious. And that's super exciting. But then the New England Patriots, they get a +2. And even if they only beat the Saints by 6, if you watch that game, probably should have been a lot more without some really shaky penalty calls that altered some huge plays in this game. Drake May continues to absolutely sling it. That was really the big story in this one. I don't have anything to add on their defense that has played much better as of late. They're still struggling to run the ball. I'm still not quite ready to shoot the Patriots up into our top couple of tiers here, but they are as close as anyone, and I really like what we're seeing from the Patriots, who took first place in the AFC East this week. And don't sleep on the fact that this is just 6 games in to the Mike Vrabel regime here, which is looking like the slam dunk hire that I think everybody thought it was. But now we will jump up to my true playoff caliber tier. These are teams that are either more complete, more proven commodities, or just have a better resume than the teams in our previous tier there. Let's go start with the Seattle Seahawks here, who cracked the top 10 for the first time this season and into this tier for the first time. But really good to see the Seahawks defense come alive this week. Like Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and what really those two guys almost alone have discovered with this offense. That's been the story of their season so far, and they continue to find success between those two guys. But the story this week was Mike Macdonald bringing that Mike Macdonald factor, the blitzes and twists and games, and the way that he was able to elevate this team's pass rush and take advantage of a team with a backup center in there that had no idea how to call out and pick any of this shit up. It was a masterclass in defensive coaching. And that's what Devon Witherspoon and Julian Love, their two best members of the secondary, out in this game. So they're only going to get healthier moving forward. Witherspoon and Love feel like they've been close to playing the last couple weeks, so hopefully they can get them in there soon. If we really start to see this defense now playing as a top 10 unit on top of what they've kind of established offensively, Seahawks are getting scary. Not a team I'd want to play right now. But then the Denver Broncos at number 9, they're going to fall down 4 spots this week. I don't think my thoughts on the Broncos have really changed too much. It's just a lot of movement around them and some teams that I had ranked below Denver last week that I had some more questions about. Those teams answered questions, whereas the Denver Broncos didn't really take a step forward this week. Going out to London and escaping against the Jets. I mean, on one hand, you can look at that and say anemic offensive performance. Not a whole lot going from them on that side of the ball. But at the same time, you can also say, well, they did hold an NFL offense to 82 yards of offense. They had a game plan that really screamed like, we can play conservative offensively, because they knew they were going to get a stop against Justin Fields and that offense. So I think that did lead to some extra conservative play calling and dropbacks from Bo Nix as well, just trying to take care of the football and punt if they need to. I still feel pretty good about the Broncos. I think they are a legit team. It's just hardly beating the Jets isn't particularly impressive, and especially some other teams behind them really answered some questions this week. So a fall for Denver. And honestly, Broncos fans can debate whether they deserve to fall in the rankings or not. But I think looking at this, especially once we review all these teams, number 9 feels like the right spot for them. You guys can let me know in the comments below what you think of that spot for Denver. But let's go to number 8, where I do have the Indianapolis Colts falling down a spot again, just because there's a couple teams here that I have climbing above them, which I do think is fair. But I will say, of all the Colts games this season, this was probably the most red flags going up and the least impressive of their wins. This week, you did see some key Daniel Jones mistakes. He has an interception on a bootleg, not really feeling the linebacker underneath there. And he also got away with what very much could have been a game-losing interception that Budda Baker just dropped. And even then, they had their backs all the way up against the wall with the Cardinals trying to win that game late. So I think as far as the Colts defense is concerned, I mean, Charvarius Ward gets a second concussion on the season in pregame warmups. Hopefully he can get back out there soon, but 2 concussions within 3 weeks, that's a scary deal. So we'll see how quickly they can get him back. They've definitely felt the lack of depth at corner when he's out. So that's a big thing to monitor there. And I don't think we're going to see him out there for at least a week. So this team isn't perfect, but again, they're really just falling because of other teams passing them up. And I love this offensive infrastructure with JT and all these different playmakers. Josh Downs has totally come alive these last couple of weeks. Tyler Warren, of course, Pittman, Alec Pierce came back this week. He was making plays. So I will hold that this just might be the best offensive infrastructure if you remove all the quarterbacks from the play calling, where Shane Steichen has a firm finger on the pulse of this offense. One of the best offensive lines in the league, and all those playmakers, they're still absolutely humming there. And it did ultimately lead to them winning this one to get to 5-1. But this is where the Week 7 power rankings get really interesting, because that's going to conclude our playoff caliber tier. And I'm actually going to cut off, for this week at least, the very top tier of these rankings. We have had, so far this season, Super Bowl contenders, and then we've had Super Bowl frontrunners, where there's really a gap between teams that maybe could win a Super Bowl, or that are more like you kind of expect that they will get there and are more like Super Bowl or bust types of teams. I think this tier especially has really converged within the last couple of weeks, and it makes for some really interesting conversations. Frankly, at the very top of this, an impossible ranking this week. There's not a clear-cut number one team. You can make an argument for any combination of these teams here at the top, but this is my best shot at ordering these teams. I had to just resort to the good old neutral field. Who do I think wins between these 7 teams here in Week 7? And I'm actually going to put the Vegas favorite to win the Super Bowl right now, the Buffalo Bills, at number 7. The Bills have lost 2 straight, and I hope it's just a little, mini slump for them. But they've kind of lost their mojo, man. Like, offensively, it feels like they've had 20 straight games where they've just been an absolute machine. They don't turn the ball over. They don't commit those costly penalties. Josh Allen playing unbelievable football. Well, they sputtered a little bit in Atlanta. They sputtered a lot of bit. Only 14 points. They really struggled to throw the ball. Couldn't get James Cook going. You've really started to feel the last 2 weeks the lack of verticality in this offense, and especially some of the sloppy turnovers. It's just very uncharacteristic of this team. So they got to find that identity again. I think they can, and I fully expect that they will, but they have to prove that they can get back to being, one of the 2 or 3 best offenses in the league, because they just have not been that for a couple weeks now. Especially because defensively, what you're getting here, right? Like, you're getting that bend, don't break, soft Sean McDermott defense. It's not really going to elevate that unit at all. And they're really struggling to stop the run this year as well. Bijan ran rampant on this team, and they totally controlled the clock and kept Josh Allen off the field in that Monday night game. So the Bills have issues, but at the same time, it's like, I don't entirely disagree that they should be Super Bowl favorites either, because they're still in a pretty damn good position to get home field advantage in the AFC if they can settle back down and be the Bills that we've come to know and love over the last year plus. But at least evaluating these teams for Week 7, I like having the Bills at number 7. But then at number 6, the LA Rams, they take care of business against the Ravens. Losing Puka early in that game, I think, definitely derailed their game plan, and they had to kind of adjust, and you saw the offense not have quite as much success there. But good to see the defense, granted against a Cooper Rush Ravens team, but good to see the defense hold up their end of the bargain. I still think the Rams are a super complete team. Hopefully Puka can get back out there quickly, because he has looked like one of the best receivers in the NFL this year, obviously. But the Rams, obviously, taking care of business, not a ton of changing opinions for them coming out of Week 6. But then the Philadelphia Eagles, how far is this slide going to go? That's what's going to be interesting for them. I still have the utmost respect for so many aspects of this team, right? The roster talent especially, but how they win in the trenches, this receiving tandem that they're struggling to really get going. Vic Fangio as a defensive coach, to get this defense to lock in and play great defense when they can have Jalen Carter out there. He misses this game on a short week. We obviously saw when he got kicked out of the Cowboys game, like, he might have to be the defensive player of the year just because of what that Eagles defense has looked like with and without him. But that was obviously a big loss against the Giants. Ultimately, though, if Jalen Hurts can't start playing better football, and if Kevin Patullo can't work hopefully with Nick Sirianni, who somehow manages to avoid all criticism of their offensive deficiencies, even though he was hired as an offensive head coach. Until the play calling and Jalen Hurts can improve here, this team might keep spiraling. And the Eagles do feel very beatable right now because their offense is just extremely middle of the road. You're hoping if you're an Eagles fan, this is as bad as it's going to get for them, and they'll make some adjustments and play their best football down the stretch here, similar to what we saw from this team last year. But we are slowly realizing that this team is a different team than the 2024 Eagles, and they do have some more weaknesses. And, the run game and the offensive line isn't what it was last year either. Like, Jordan Mailata has gone from elite player last year to just solid left tackle. That's certainly hurt them, on top of having an actual injury for the first time on that offensive line in a year. But they felt the loss of Landon Dickerson there at left guard. So they're going through it. We'll see how quickly they can turn things around, or if they can. But then number 4, I have the Green Bay Packers. It's funny, I feel like, just in talking to people on the internet, I feel like they view the tie as a loss for Green Bay against Dallas. Yet you look at it and they do have the 4th best winning percentage in the league right now. And I think as well, with the Packers in the first 3 weeks of the season, kind of establishing the idea that this could be this, championship caliber elite defense as kind of the identity of the team, I think it's also led to people kind of overlooking the fact that Jordan Love and this Packers offense is really humming these last 2 weeks. I think Love is playing some of the best ball of his career. He's been accurate, decisive. The way he's scrambling and moving in the pocket has been really impressive. The Packers offense has been the story of this team the last 2 weeks, especially with them discovering their first-round pick, Matthew Golden, who's playing awesome. And it's not like the Packers defense was bad this week. They just have shown now against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and going back to the plays Dallas made against them in that week where they tied, there is a way to attack this Packers defense. If you challenge these corners on the outside, the secondary is certainly imperfect for Green Bay, and their defense is going to be imperfect. But they still have a hell of a pass rush, and I do like the way that this offense is equipped to complement what is at worst a good defense, and any given week could be a great defense. 4th to me feels just about right for Green Bay amidst all these teams that have some holes that you can pick at. But then at number 3, I'm going to have the Tampa Bay Bucks, boosting them up 5 spots, climbing up into the top tier here. This has been the ultimate vibes team this season with Baker Mayfield and Emeka Egbuka and what they're doing there. I mean, Baker has been nothing short of the MVP of this season through 6 weeks. And I love the John Wick comparison that I've been going with. I mean, the way he's just bouncing off tackles. I mean, I called him John Wick last week, but was that scramble where he breaks 4 tackles in a spot where the Niners were like kind of taking momentum back in that game? And like, I don't know. I haven't gotten a lot of reaction to the John Wick comps, but at least in my mind, it's like totally perfect. And obviously putting them at number 3 and bumping them up this much is giving them a ton of respect. But how sustainable is it with this Bucs team? Egbuka is hurt now. He's going to miss presumably at least a week. Hamstring strain for him. Godwin had a setback. We'll see if Mike Evans can get out there and stay out there. They lose another right guard this week. We know they've got injuries at D-line, and they're missing a new corner every week. It's just a complete turnstile of injuries for this team, and I do worry about that. I worry that counting on 3rd and 16 scrambles and deep shots against, frankly, busted coverages by a Niners team to Cameron Johnson are going to be sustainable for this team. But they do just keep finding a way. The play calling has been so spectacular on both sides of the ball with Jonathan Grizzard. And Todd Bowles is having an awesome season this year, too, with the defense. The last couple weeks have been really impressed by some of the adjustments and blitzes he's bringing to the table, too. So that all goes into the rise for the Bucs here. And I guess the positive spin on them is maybe this team is a few weeks away from getting Luke Gedeke, their right tackle, back, from getting Bucky Irving back, from maybe someday having this incredible wide receiver trio out there together. having a healthy secondary. I mean, the potential of that to happen to me, that does make betting on the Bucs as like 18-1 Super Bowl odds. Like, this is the week to do it, because if they get a handful of these guys back, this is easily one of the best teams in the league. They already are without those guys, but I think it's polarizing as far as the sustainability of where this team is at with injuries and existing roster talent as well. So they'll be a fun team to monitor as this week they go into the house of my number 2 ranked Detroit Lions here. And again, this does just come down to what I said when I kicked off this tier. Like, who do I think wins in a battle this week? And yes, Detroit is at home, but they are 4.5-point favorites in that game. And if you put it in a neutral site, I would take Detroit to win that game as well. While they lost in Arrowhead, I'm willing to look at that Lions team and just say it wasn't their night. The Chiefs played an outstanding game, looking to get to 3-3 as opposed to 2-4 in a primetime game in their own house. It was kind of the perfect storm for the Chiefs. And for the Lions, just a couple of missed plays that I'm used to seeing the Lions execute, right? They have the illegal procedure, wipes off the touchdown to start the game. Amon-Ra St. Brown drops a ball on 4th down. I've seen enough from the Lions to know that those aren't common characteristics of that team. And if you change those plays, a game looks a hell of a lot different. So I still like Detroit as our number 2 team here. I still think they've been outstanding. And that loss in Arrowhead is going to go down as one of their few losses this season. Not to mention, they should be getting like Lee McNeil back at some point soon here. They've been out there without Taylor Decker. Their cornerback situation can't really get any worse. We'll see like if Terrion Arnold and DJ Reed can get out there quicker. So not really worried about the Lions' loss in Arrowhead. There was certainly some warts revealed as far as the injuries in the secondary, and I think you can beat this interior of the offensive line from a pass rushing perspective if you can get them into 3rd down opportunities. Again, all these teams have aspects of them that you can pick apart, but I really think we did see a battle of the 2 best teams in football right now there on Sunday night, with the Chiefs actually climbing up to being my number 1 team. It's a rise of 9 spots, and this is kind of the perfect storm of they beat my number 1 team from last week. A bunch of the other top teams lost with the Bills and the Eagles. But I also said it last week when this team lost to the Jags, and I ranked them number 10. I said, I think this is as low as it's going to go for the Chiefs. And just watching them play football this year, they actually feel like a better team than they did last year. They're so much less dependent on their defense. Patrick Mahomes is playing so much better than we've seen him play the last couple of years. I mean, it feels like they have that fire-breathing dragon back. And as we know, that's the biggest difference making you can have in this sport is Patrick Mahomes when he has his confidence and he's playing his best ball and he's got guys to throw to. I think Steve Spagnuolo has shown this year that when he locks in and treats an individual matchup like a playoff game as he did against Detroit, he can make you uncomfortable and elevate the defense. And most importantly, yes, they've had weapons this year, like Xavier Worthy getting healthier and healthier every week, Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton. But I think Travis Kelce looks better than he did in the regular season last year. And of course, Rashee Rice is now back. When they get a convincing win against Detroit on Sunday Night Football, I felt really good about them. I wasn't really looking ahead to the power rankings. I didn't really expect that I would jump them up from 10 to number 1. But as I look at these top 7 teams, I'm taking the Chiefs against any of them right now. It's just the way things kind of shook down. But obviously, you can make an argument for any of these teams in this top tier as the number 1 squad. Maybe not Buffalo and Philadelphia just because of the way the last 2 weeks have gone for them. But especially Detroit, Tampa, Green Bay, Kansas City. I think any one of those as number 1. I even considered kind of taking the cop-out answer and just saying let the best man win between Detroit and Tampa Bay. Very well could be the winner of that game takes the number 1 spot next week. But that was my best crack at it. I would love to hear how you guys would filter kind of the top 10 of your power rankings this week. It's as hard of a week to make power rankings as I can ever remember. I think that's a ton of fun. This NFL season is a ton of fun. It's wide open. there are so many opportunities for these teams as we now head into the second third of this season to make some noise and surprise us for better or for worse. So I just can't wait to keep things going. It's been a ton of fun this season. I hope you guys have enjoyed it so far. I hope you've enjoyed following the content on this channel so far. So if you have, please do hit that like button. Let me hear all of your comments down below, what you think of the rankings. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of my other NFL content and my weekly power rankings here. But thank you for watching, and I will see you guys very soon for the Week 6 recap show on the Fully Inflated Football Podcast out tomorrow. Peace.